Welcome to this Chi Beauty tutorial. I'm discussing the role of static magnetic fields in micro wound healing by discussing the pairing of two very different modalities. One more to do with creation of micro wounds, so that's talking about skin needling here, and pairing that with a modality that has been created for wound repair and for speeding the recovery potential of skin. So by placing these together in this tutorial, we can watch how we can integrate both of these treatments to give the client the best possible outcome. In practice, skin needling is also known as collagen induction therapy, CIT. It is favoured by a lot of corneotherapists who are concerned with treatments that have a lot to do with the healing nature of skin and holistic viewpoint of skin therapy. The treatment is controlled as micro wounds are created over the skin to extrapolate the body's wound healing cascade to increase collagen deposition. As all micro wounding of the skin evokes an immune response, the Chi Beauty system evokes a biological response to static magnetic fields using micromagnets, a technology that we have created specifically for levitation of all skin gags and for clearing of tissues. In clinical practice, Chi Beauty is a quantum-based skin therapy. It is categorized as a molecular intervention for quickening homeostasis and for regulating skin cells. Static magnetic fields are created by various size gradients used over the skin, an array of micromagnets. They are creating then environmental inputs, so this is a healthy way to activate endogenous responses. Chi Beauty practitioners manipulate the stratum corneum, or the architecture of the lipid bilayer. The action potential of the treatments are driven by the static magnetic field influence over the dermovasculature. The electron transport chain is changed, and this means that cellular waste can be shifted due to the influence of the signaling throughout the extracellular matrix and the interstitial cleanup. So it promotes Langerhans cells and immunity and things like that. So we talk about that later on in other tutorials. This tutorial is talking about the combination of the two treatments. Our model today is Stella. Stella works in the industry. She is actually a perfect model for us because she has regular needling treatments. So from our point of view, she's going to be able to give us a very realistic and very honest interpretation of her experience, number one, of the treatment, but also give us an idea of the changes in the healing process. So her skin normally suffers from a little bit of transepidermal water loss after the treatment. She normally has the usual 3 days healing time for the dissipation of the redness. So today we're going to use a matrix to stretch across the skin tissues to evoke more of a healing and anti-inflammatory response. And this is also tailored and connected to specific points that are used for diffusion. So let's have a look at how this is very different to the typical Chi Beauty treatment. This protocol was filmed with Chi Beauty guest Robin McAlpine from Skin to Fix in Newcastle when she visited the Gold Coast earlier this year. It was fantastic to see Robin at work and using CIT from a corneotherapy viewpoint. Robin used a variation of depths with the Exceed medical microneedling device. The depth range from 0.3 millimeters to 1 millimeter depth. She tailored the treatment to Stella's needs. So this was according to the initial consultation, focusing on some scar revision and collagen building. We know that static magnetic fields used at a certain gradient is going to influence the biological phases of healing. So it's going to regulate all of the phases from homeostasis, inflammatory, proliferative, and then of course remodeling phase. So I'm going to set this up at the very beginning before we start our needling treatment. I set the field through the tragus connection. Chi Beauty practitioners understand what this means. This is working with integral points for working with heat patterns over the skin using some triple warmer points and working with the vagal regulation. The treatment, open-ended fields were used to create gradients around certain areas to initiate movement of blood and to shift blood out of areas that were becoming overloaded, especially through the lymphatics. During the treatment, we could see the heat was shifting out from around the outer wall of the micromagnets, consistent with our wound healing treatments. As Chi Beauty practitioners, if you want the mapping and the instructions for this protocol, please just send a message through to me. For everybody else, I won't be discussing the points. I'm just going to talk about the process and what's happening within the skin tissues. The outcome of treatments for micro wound healing relies upon the biological phases of healing. We know that, and we do know that the inflammatory phase begins immediately. Together, CIT and Chi Beauty static magnetic fields are changing the experience of the inflammation and repair via the signalling pathways that are programmed to recalibrate and repair. For example, I love the combination of CIT with Chi Beauty, in particular for pitting of skin or acne scars on the skin. I feel that disturbing the area first with CIT is going to give you an opportunity for very deep repair. We know trauma initiates the stress response, which is a signalling mechanism that the body uses to adapt regulation to protect the body. So some of these signals will be deactivated and others are going to be heightened. We discussed this in the Chi Beauty training. In an aesthetics framework, using the Chi micromagnets, which is a static magnetic field technology, to help manage the shutdowns and the turn-ons of the cellular processes, is really going to affect the outcome of the treatment. In particular, when you're working with skins at the very beginning, have problems with inflammation. So this really does assist that process. Micro wound repair post micro needling is always going to be related to the rhythms of the skin. So remember, skin function is related to unique cellular rhythms, which can become dysregulated during skin trauma. We know that. We know that all cell life cycles are dependent upon the energy source of the cells being capable of maintaining the program rhythms. So rhythms are a very big aspect of skin health and function, and aging, of course. By applying various size fields over the skin during this process, what I'm really doing is using a molecular intervention. It's often used to rebalance a disturbed dermal environment. We do that in Chi Beauty protocols that use quite large gradients for aged skins or for prematurely aged skins or skin conditions. So in this case, the fields that I'm using are quite wide and very open. We call these very low gradient fields. Now, I don't want to affect blood too much. So if I start creating a lot of what we call reservoirs and pooling around areas where we have blood flow, so we can see that on Stella's skin we have a little bit of blood on the lower portion where she has the scarring. So Robin has just gone a little bit deeper in that area. I would not place the micromagnets and circle them around that area and bring more blood flow into that space. So that's just a little clue about how Chi Beauty works with blood. So I'm working really with dissipation, which makes sense to all the Chi Beauty therapists that are listening to this tutorial. In wound healing, the static magnetic field technology helps us to resynchronize skin function. So what does that mean? That goes back to the rhythms I was talking about. In most skin needling treatments, the stratum corneum closes within roughly 15 minutes. So this is how long we leave the static magnetic field in place over the skin immediately after skin needling. Leaving the micromagnets or the static magnetic field in place for 15 minutes is going to give us the advantage of achieving homeostasis very quickly. The lipid bilayer, which is selectively permeable, is going to respond to the static magnetic field. So the architecture of the lipid bilayer is going to receive that signaling and re-establish itself into that protective homeostatic state. This, of course, is going to create an environment for the microbiota to find its way into the spaces, to reform, and then of course to thrive and to multiply. So this is the goal of the treatment, is to create that dermovasculature that is going to be conducive to a healthy repair and establishment of that microbiome. Stella messaged me 4 days post-treatment saying that her skin normally responds well after needling, but this is the best it's looked. So she is really keen to repeat the process with the combination treatment of CIT with Chi Beauty. As an integrative therapy, combination. We could break this down and say that microneedling induces cell proliferation via the electrical signals and of course growth factors, and then of course Chi Beauty comes in to regulate cell proliferation and all the phases of wound healing. Integration of home care for Stella was really important post this treatment, to work with vagal regulation and to assist the repair of the skin, of course, and to maintain a certain level of hydration. As we know, healthy wound healing should never be assumed, so the trigger of the micro wounds will not always eventuate in fast or rapid healing and smooth collagen. That's where I think Chi Beauty comes into its own with influencing the deposits via the signalling. I feel the advantages of this integration are profound when we are working with inflammatory processes and the skin's ability to self-repair and self-regulate.